Welcome to BBC Indiana. This program is Music Through Time. The year was 1990. After 11 years in power, Margaret Thatcher's government was facing one of its deepest domestic crises yet, the poll tax riot. But amid all this, our story begins across the English Channel and up the coast in Rotterdam. After a flush period of hits on the UK and Netherlands charts, Dutch band Johannes Vonk and the Clogheads were facing financial ruin. In an early 1989 interview, Clogheads keyboardist Mohammed Sharibi made an off-the-cuff remark about disliking pea soup and smoked sausage. By mid-1989, the Clogheads faced a boycott of their records and legal action from the Dutch Soup Makers Union, all of which coalesced into a movement called the Air to Soup Ultras.
Look, his comments about soup were unwise, to say the least, but he was an outspoken guy. He once almost got us kicked out of a branch of Feyboy in Rotterdam for saying that cheese sandwich and a glass of milk was a meal indicative of the joyless spirit of the Low Countries. But the soup thing really caused us problems. We couldnn play anywhere, from Maastricht to Den Haag. Even the Belgians were mad at us. So we went back to the UK.
It couldn't have come at a worse time for Vonk, as their record label was threatening legal action if they didn't deliver a new record by the 1st of September 1990. They'd nearly exhausted their studio budget, and there was simply no way to record anywhere in the Netherlands without finding their cars vandalized, their studio blockaded, their engineers covered in lukewarm pea soup.
We'd worked with Richard Highsmith many times before, and he had a studio in London, but he was going through some legal and personal difficulties at the time.
Sir Richard Highsmith, Vonk's friend and confidant, was in a coma following a case of carbon monoxide poisoning after a surprise pop-up concert inside the Channel Tunnel construction site, an idea intended to generate publicity for a comeback tour that ended in the biggest cocaine bust in British history.
I could never understand the cocaine thing. So, Richard claims he knew nothing about the 50 kilos of pure cocaine in his speaker case that was being smuggled through the tunnel to France, but none of it made any sense. Why would you smuggle cocaine from the UK to France? Who does cocaine in France? What was this, Serge Gainsbourg's personal collection?
Richard Highsmith was eventually acquitted on all drug smuggling charges on the basis of a lack of evidence. This was a separate case to the one brought in 1993 by the Indonesian government relating to a jar of Quaaludes found on his personal plane when it landed at Jakarta Airport.
Anyway, so Richard is out of action, but then we meet this guy, a lord of the realm, and he says he wants to fund our album. We play this new song for him, Hot Soup. We were hoping it would smooth things over back home. Anyway, the guy loves it. And he says he'll pay for the album on one condition. The song should be called Hot Tory. So I say, what's a Tory? Is that a British soup? And he says, no, it's the current party of government, and they're not so popular, and they need a younger, sexier image.
The man in question was the late Alfie Hamilton, or Lord Ham, known today more for It's Too Late to Matter, his unsuccessful 1999 public relations campaign to make it legal to smoke in hospital. He was concerned that the unpopularity of the Tories during the poll tax riot was the reason his nephew, Crispin Hamilton, now the Conservative MP for Hitchin and Harpenden, found himself perpetually dateless.
The whole thing was crazy, but at this point, we'd take anything. This guy wants me to record a song so his nephew can get laid and then he'll fund the whole album? I'm from the Netherlands. I'll fuck your nephew myself if I have to.
And it was the subsequent single, 1990's Hot Tory, that brought the Clogheads back to financial stability. Kept out of the number one slot only by New Order's World in Motion, the song revivified their balance sheet and facilitated the recording of their now classic, best-selling 1991 album, We're Sorry. Here it is.
Walking down the boulevard, what should I see? Hot Tory, showing off the signet ring and looking at me. Hot Tory, you ask me for some backy and you ask me my name. Hot Tory, you said you'd pay me later if I bought some cocaine. Hot Tory, your brothers in the house of cavalry. Your birthday's a two-page spread in Tatler magazine. Hot Tory, hey, Hot Tory, joggers and a bomber coat. Hot Tory, hey, Hot Tory, your parents' house has a moat. You got a Cambridge Trust and a painting of Thatcher, but it's the inconvenient part. Hot Tory, you could privatize my heart.
Wow, it sure has been a long time since we heard from the Clogheads.
It really has. Has been a little while, but it's important to hear from our musical impresarios from the 80s every now and then.
Check back in. Check in on your clogs.
Would we suggest that the reason it has been a couple of years since or maybe 18 months or whatever, since we uncovered one of the old reel-to-reel tapes, because the production values continue to go up and up and up, because we realize that the more professional it is, the funnier it is as a premise.
And also it's upheaval in the warehouse. I'm not going to no one wants to work anymore. That's all I'm saying. The guys, a lot of the guys we've had clearing out the warehouse, they quit after COVID. They've all taken jobs working for UPS. And, it's hard to get people to unearth Dutch ephemera.
So we had to get a 19-year-old at National Service to find this for us.
That's right. Yeah.
But no. Thank you very much, of course, to the Clogheads, wherever you are, for providing us with another wonderful bit of intro music. And welcome.
Wherever they've all retired.
Very relatable content as well.
Yeah.
I will say it's one of the most relatable Cloghead song that I've heard for some time.
Yeah. It's something close to all of our hearts here at Trashfuture Towers.
I also want to welcome myself back from my holiday.
Yeah.
I hope that to all the listeners, I hope that
Riley's back from beating a man to death with an oar on a rowing boat and assuming his identity.
It may be worse than that, because my original joke for this was Hitman levels, and everything that you've told me since getting back leads me to believe that you did, in fact, just go to a series of Hitman levels on holiday.
I fully experienced something you could call like Hitman Tuscan Sun DLC pack. Like every single thing I did, from the wedding venue to the town I was staying in to like the little wine tour that I went to, it was chest high walls everywhere.
Yeah. I would say, like, further, it's like the merger game. It's the Hercule Poirot expansion pack for Hitman 2, where like Riley is in the bit where Poirot comes around and attempts to disentangle who was killed and why.
The other thing is like everything was full of little cubbies. The town I was staying in.
Yeah, you got all those head injuries. You kept waking up and stuffed into lockers.
But that my clothes.
Yeah.
The town I was staying in near where the wedding was like one of these old hilltop towns, like these medieval towns. And because it's on top of a hill, there's like one kind of main street that just loops around it and kind of spirals up. And I just so happened to be there when they had their like annual Italian town festival thing. Like Siena has the Palio, whatever. They have something called, their version of it is called the Bravio della Botti, which is where a bunch of guys from the town race wine barrels up the entire corkscrew road that goes up the whole thing.
Up?
Yeah.
So they're like rolling them up?
Yeah, they're rolling the barrels up, and it's like the historic quarters of the village compete with one another.
I presume they're empty.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Agent 47, I could imagine this, like in the Hitman 2 Tuscan Sun DLC pack, one of the levels has a mini game where you have to roll the barrel up, taking the identity of one of the guys, and then you kill the guy by putting explosives in the barrel when you reach the finish line. It's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, he's like preternaturally the best barrel roller in the world, even though he's never tried it before or learned how to do it.
It's just like Jason Bourne. He can just do anything.
Anyway,
he can roll a barrel.
My new favorite kind of wine is green and fizzy, and I really hope I find my clothes
It's like
soon.
Monster Energy.
Yeah, that's right. But it's good to be back here in the studio doing the podcast and not getting my head hit with by a bald man with a barcode on the back of his neck and stashed behind a chest. There were so many chest-high walls at the wedding. I can't emphasize that to you enough.
Yeah, they had their first dance under a really big, low chandelier, suspended by a single sort of like oversized chain.
Yeah.
The groom kept like talking loudly on his phone while leaning over a really precipitous windowsill that looked out over a cliff.
It was up a big hill too. There were so many Hitman elements. But we're back, and we're going to talk about the damn news.
Yeah, we survived 2 whole episodes of me being your understudy.
I listened back; they were very good, and the Hitman thing was very perceptive. It's more Hitman than Mr. Ripley.
So,
Well, that's exactly what Mr. Ripley would say, is the thing. If you had been Mr. Ripley'd.
so I want to talk a little bit about school because it's time for school again.
And abruptly changing the topic, something else that Mr. Ripley would do.
So, 156 schools and colleges across the UK have just now received a warning that they have been using something called RAAC, or Reinforced Autoclaved Aerated Concrete, and that the warning from the Department for Education basically said, hey, we know that it's school on Monday, but if you have these blocks in your buildings, then you can't have kids in them.
Yeah, so basically what happened is one of the kids who did not want to go to school when they started back and was like manifesting actually is a witch. Like one of the Zoomer TikTok kids actually does have powers, and this has just happened now as a result because school's closed.
Yeah, this means they basically, right, several hundred schools up and down the country are now having to just not happen because they have not been funded to exist, and they've just been decided. Let's have, we have had mafia standard construction without mafia standard food, basically.
Yeah.
For too long.
Yeah, we didn't have any of the like Tuscan scenery. If you want to get pushed off a balcony in this country, it's not going to be anywhere near as aesthetic.
We need to replace it with woke concrete.
Yeah.
That's the only explanation I have for this.
British mafia is a very, very funny concept. Hey, why don't you run down to the corner shop, get me a tin of beans? I'm making dinner. I'm making beans on toast for the family. Your grandmother's coming round.
In prison, dinner was a big deal.
Yeah.
So basically, right, like this means that like schools have been told with like a day, like a weekend to prepare, not even a long weekend, just a normal weekend to prepare. You might have to teach everyone in the playground.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Because otherwise this sort of 1970s concrete is just going to crumble and collapse and just like kill a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
I love to teach everyone in the playground. Can we have? That'll be the refrain this year. It will be like, "Sir, can we have class inside today?"
No, Timmy, I'm afraid it's very dangerous in there.
The fix for this, by the way, is literally just putting in sort of like building site or mining style joists and just like bracing everything up, which is again the sign of a sort of a country that's in a good place when your kid has to go to school in like down the pit.
You could also introduce like the staple of British education, which is the moldy porter cabin.
The
which is
porter
where,
cabin, yeah, they're coming back.
I went to a very like seemingly like a school with lots of like old buildings, none of which were like particularly useful. And there were 2 years where all my lessons took place in porter cabins.
So did I. We had porter cabins. I went to like a public school. We had porter cabins also. So if they're, ubiquitous, even to the extent of reaching that level, if you're going to school that was like built out of concrete in the 60s, you have no chance.
Put the kids in porter cabins, get them to learn about concrete, get Tom Hardy to teach them. He learned a few things from Lot.
Yeah,
a great film about
Cray
concrete.
Twins. Yeah.
The only thing I know about concrete, which apparently was completely wrong according to a concrete forum I went on afterwards.
A concrete forum.
Not any of these theoretical forums.
Well, nothing about concrete is set in stone per se.
They were so mad about that
Pouring
film.
one out.
They were so mad about that
forum.
film because they were just like, no, like it wasn't the C4 concrete. The C3 concrete was fine, actually.
Riley's weeping on my shoulder. We're back.
We're back. And I just completely missed it because I'm just on a concrete hype. So yeah, get the kids to do the concrete job.
That's what they do to guys in the British Mafia. Give him the old concrete cast. Let's just say he sleeps with the shopping trolleys at the bottom of the canal. I was going to say the most British building thing, tangentially relevant, that I heard recently. I got talking to these various like Essex geezer comedians and this one huge Welsh fella who were all doing their first go at the Fringe. They're all in terrible free Fringe venues. And this Welsh guy, they turn to him and they're like, "Oh yeah, how's your venue then?" And he goes, "Well, I have to say it's bloody peculiar." He goes, "I went in there, some kind of pub, right? And I'm talking to the landlord and he shows me my room and I'm like, that's a bloody weird room, that is, bloody peculiar little room." And I say, "What do you normally use this room for then?" And he goes, well, we don't normally use it at all. There's asbestos in there.
Oh, how fantastic.
Perfect. And it just wouldn't have worked not in that voice, but it was perfect.
So I'd say, though, that this, for me, once again, right, I think we can see a little bit of the future of Britain here, which is that as time goes on, the entire country is just going to move more and more things into porta-cabins. Because like nothing that's a new build now is going to be like usable in 60 years.
Yeah, let's put them in the port cabin.
Yeah. So we're going to get the Gherkin porta cabin. We're going to get the Shard porta cabin. The House of Parliament porta cabin.
Falling apart. They're going to be in the porta cabins. Yeah, easy.
You're also going to have like Canary, that the HSBC building, Canary Wharf, about to be empty.
Porta cabin.
So you could just turn that into a big porta cabin.
Yeah.
Porta cabin is literally like, it was supposed to just be an office for people on building sites. And then it sort of became, now you live here and also most of your education will take place here. Oh, you got into like a fancy Oxford college. Well, here's Christ College in a porta cabin. Have fun.
The official Christ College porta cabin. I went to porta cabin Oxford.
Yeah. It's just there on porta cabin Meadow.
Yeah. There you go. Very nice.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So I look forward to like, if you wanted to write a young adult science fiction series about the future of Britain, you could just be like, all buildings are forbidden. Life takes place in porta cabins.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was actually at Peter Cabin.
Thank you. Where? So I want to move on, though. Another school topic, although this one is revisiting an old friend. You might not remember because we talked about it last in 2021, but we had a long segment about a Silicon Valley startup company that tried to reinvent the bus called Zoom. Z-U with an umlaut over it, M.
Zoom. Oh, heavy metal. Yeah. Zoom.
Zoom.
Zoom. Yeah. I don't remember this because I don't remember anything that I've said or any of you have said on an episode after we finish recording it. So
yeah, of course. So to remind you, right, it is Uber for buses, and it was a kind of a, let's say, union unfriendly exercise that was run out of San Francisco.
Surprising.
Cost like the Oakland Unified School District quite a large amount of money.
Crazy.
And the whole thing was, parents can like track where the bus is, but the main thing is that like all of our drivers are, our drivers are employees, but we bring them in from all around the world, all around the country anyway, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, Uber for school buses got a contract to Howard County schools, which is, I believe, in Maryland. And so this is from an article that came out this week in the Howard County Observer. So this is local journalism. Thousands of Howard County public school students were stranded without a yellow bus ride to school for a second day in a row after a California tech company, Zoom, hired to solve transportation issues, couldn't provide buses for 20 routes for at least the first week of school.
So it is Uber for buses because you just can't get one.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe if you're a shitty kid, you get a low rating and can't get on.
That is very funny. You're like throwing stuff at the back of the bus and you get like a 1 star.
It's a bus with no back, no bad kids.
Yeah, that would be cool if you got on a bus though and the guy's like giving you like bottles of water and breath mints and like telling you about the price of property in Karachi or something. That would be fun.
So, Zoom promised to transform student transportation in Maryland and beyond with an app designed to let parents track buses in real time. And with a 3-year, $27 million contract to operate nearly half the district's bus routes. But, and when Alice and I talked about this earlier, we thought this was really fun. Problems began early on the first day of classes when 200 buses tried to squeeze out of one parking lot at the same time, causing delays.
Amazing.
They did the Mr. Burns germ thing in real life.
Yeah, it was. They have essentially hired 200 stooges to try and drive their buses.
Well, that kind of turns out to be more true than not, as we'll get into.
And there didn't appear to be enough bus drivers for the number of routes, even after the company said it had flown in drivers from other locations all around the country.
Yeah, this was the detail that fascinated me, the bus stooges, because I just imagine the glamorous jet set lifestyle of a freelance school bus driver, that you're sort of like you're being flown in from out of state in order to do a little job. So the Jerk Vanderclerk of school buses.
Now I've been hired to drive this here
I did not expect you to do that voice when Jerk Vanderclerk was teed up
just
so
on
perfectly.
The table. Yeah.
Well, I feel like Jerk Vanderclerk would be a slightly different vibe. Like, drive a bus. Yeah, I've not had to do that since Angola in 72. I tell you what, some men they never drive a bus again after that.
So they basically, this is what Zoom does. They fly in all their bus. They fly in like the A-team of bus drivers from all around the country.
You'd think they would be like the best at it because, you know, as you say, the A-team.
Yeah, but then of course also it's like just told basically go from here to here. Make this time. No coordination. No one knows the city. So they've just dropped in a bunch of yellow bus drivers who've never been there before and are like, figure it out.
Do you remember that sort of like anti-globalization thing that did the rounds years ago? It still crops up occasionally, where it's like the package of like canned pineapples or whatever, where it's like these were grown in Brazil, packaged in Japan, bought in the US, and then it's like a map of like we shipped these from here to here to here. Well, in this case, it's like no, we flew in a guy from across the US in order to drive your kid like I don't know, like 10 blocks to school.
But badly.
Yes, yeah. Well, we flew in a guy from across state to not drive your kid 10 blocks to school.
So, some buses arrived at bus stops 20 to 30 minutes late, with parents reporting that single buses were carrying students who frequently attended different schools and didn't know one another. Drivers appeared to not know anything about the routes, and children were frequently left to walk home. Some buses delivered students home as much as an hour late or not at all. This is an
We're just like, you'll never see your child again, like the fucking Pied Piper.
Yeah.
And then they put some like fucking French bus driver on the route, and there's a bunch of kids starting their new life in Montpellier now.
Well, this is you know. Are you familiar with like Edward Gorey comics?
Sure.
No.
You know, it's these it's one of these guys that just like goth comic drawing where it's sort of unfortunate things happening to Victorian children, like Melville liked to go to the mill. Now Melville's been milled, and it'll be a picture of Melvin going through the mill.
Like Hilaire Belloc for the sort of British analogy. Your cautionary tales.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like, you know, pictures of sort of grim things happening to, you know, to sort of haunted looking children.
The sort of thing we now call official government policy. Am I right?
Oh my God, you do have news for me.
That's it. We're getting on Radio 4. Are the producers listening? These are the kind of gags I can write.
You could also see this, I think, as like a kind of Salat combo delivered to a school district by a bus company. Just getting punched on every surface of your body all at once.
Yeah, just Hilaire Belloc looking for a rhyme for porter cabin, you know?
So
yeah.
A parent followed her middle school daughter's bus yesterday to make sure it got to the school okay. They have an app.
That's two things. First of all, you have the app so you don't have to do that, and it's meant to be like Uber, and you can see where your Uber is. But second of all, even though this proves to be justified, that's slightly helicopter parenting.
Well, yeah, because we're now getting into the Alien versus Predator of company that is trying to work out how to operate a bus service from first principles versus Bay Area parents.
No, this is a Baltimore, Maryland.
Still though, like following your kid's school. My parents used to throw me off a cliff to get to school. You know, just like crash in at terminal velocity.
Yeah, we lived on top of the Tarpeian Rock, and I went to school in the Forum. My father would throw us off the Tarpeian Rock every day. Never did us any harm.
Yeah, I went to Tarpeian Prep.
I had to avoid Visigoths on my way to the schooler every day. Never did me any harm.
Yeah.
I was taught by a Greek, so what if he was a nonce?
That's just, you know what that is? That's just the history, boys.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
So also, I actually don't. If the parent knew anything about Zoom, they're totally reasonable in being like, I have no way of knowing where my daughter is going to be at the end of this. She could be joined up to the French Foreign Legion. I have no idea. Of course, I'm going to follow the bus to see where they go.
Sent to Ukraine.
Yeah. It's your daughter is good at Fortnite and is now piloting a drone over the Donbass. But she followed the bus and then saw it drive over a grassy median, dividing 2 trains of traffic.
Oh,
cool.
Great. I like that also, like, not only are they bus drivers who don't know the area, they're also people who cannot drive. Like, I love, like, the levels of just, like, look, we're trying to come at this. We don't want people coming at driving a bus with any bad habits. So we want to make sure they don't know the area at all, and also that they've never driven a vehicle before.
It's like, it's not even the ATM anymore. This is more like the bus Dirty Dozen, Where it's like they didn't play by society's rules, and now they've had to be formed into like a special unit, you know?
I think you could call it the Inglorious Bustards.
Oh, yeah,
that's
you.
the
Very
fucking
nice.
episode time.
Yeah.
The Radio 4 bit is coming soon.
BBC, I am available.
I'm not available. I'm extraordinarily busy. But also, it's very fun. It's like, this is just like, you know, the movie about the gamer who becomes the race car driver?
Yes.
This is the movie about the same thing, but a guy who played a lot of Grand Theft Auto Online becoming a school bus driver.
Busterismo.
Yeah, when you're like 15 and you get really, really bored playing GTA, and then you just start driving a bus normally.
There is a solution to the problem, though, which is that you could just take the wheels off the bus and turn it into a porta cabin.
That's
the
smart.
school.
That's yeah.
But
Yep,
you can
that's
make your
good.
own school.
Or
Yeah.
you teach the kids, and by teach I put that very loosely. It could be like app-based, 10 minutes of like quizzes or whatever, to drive the bus. They're going to school and they're getting marketable skills at the same time.
What if every student drove their own bus?
Yeah, there you go. Now we're talking. Yeah.
You know?
And then they can help other people get where they're going. They've got like a route to drop off people going to work on their way to school.
We've finally found another public service that we can use people from the town for this. Now every city bus is driven by kids on their way to school. If you want to get a bus in school hours, no, you can't. It's over. But,
Yeah. Look, we're beyond people from the town now. We can't afford people from the town. We need children from the
No,
town.
children from other towns.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Also, Alice, I want to like follow this to its conclusion, right? If all the children drive the buses on the way to school, that means there's one bus run early in the morning, then all the buses stop at school, the kids go to school, and if you want to get somewhere that's not the school, you get on the school bus, wait around in the school parking lot all day, and then you get on the correct bus that another child will drive home, and then you go where you're going.
And that's why it's the most English policy, because it provides a normal reason to hang around in a school parking lot in the evenings.
So I have a little more on this. Ben Schmidt, president of the Howard County Education Association, the teachers union, was observing arrivals one morning when nobody showed up.
What if we had a school and nobody came?
Yeah.
And this is a quote from him. And what made things more interesting that I've never seen in my 25 years was that then a van pulled up, and the only thing that I could say to describe what this van looked like was that it looked like something used by a contractor, and out of it jumped 3 or 4 children.
Oh, no.
It's like, wait, Blue Van Man picked up some kids on the way to school.
We genuinely put your kids in the anonymous van.
We flew out 150 bus drivers from all over everywhere. And then we put them all in buses at the same time, said, go. They all crashed into each other as they left the parking lot. And so we just did a kind of like Dunkirk evacuation of just anybody with a car. Just get some kids in there.
Well, we came up with a genius solution. Most of the paedophiles, they've got vans. So what we did was we drafted them in as emergency bus drivers, meaning they're now unable to nonce the kids because they're too busy driving them to school rather than from school to some kind of noncing location. And also, we don't need bus drivers because the paedophiles will do it for free.
You know when
Two
some
birds,
public
one stone.
service collapses and they're like, oh, they've brought in the army to do it, and there's a bunch of photos of like guys from the Royal Logistics Corps or whatever driving fire engines. You'd hate to see that with pedophiles. Like they've drafted the sex offenders.
You'd need to have some kind of like an explosive collar or whatever.
Like the British,
Just like, no,
the British
it's a
Suicide
formed
Squad.
unit, like a bunch of guys in like sort of cardigans with holes in them and stuff driving the fire engine.
The really dirty dozen. Like guys, like it's like Jimmy Savile, Gary Glitter, and people being sent on some like suicidal raiding mission in occupied Normandy. It would actually be perfect because Savile's got the fucking cigar. There always has to be one guy with he's there, like, everyone else is in camo and he's just in a tracksuit and he's like, now then.
Is there an ethical quandary brought up by the idea of Jimmy Savile noncing the Waffen SS? Like, is that something that we're sort of uncomfortable with?
Yeah.
So I finish this. This is probably one of my favorite names I've read in a while, not because it's terrible, but because it's cool. Local resident Kurt Francisco, which is
Cool.
it's a cellar door name. It just sounds good. Everyone listening at home, On the count of three,
hard-bitten, like 23rd century cybercop Kurt Francisco said.
On the count of three, if you're listening to this episode, and everyone here, say it with me, and you, Nate, editing it, just say it aloud. 1, 2, 3.
Kurt Francisco.
Oh, it sounds good.
It is
Kurt
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does sound like it's like the name of a character in a sketch. Like it doesn't feel like a real guy.
Well, like someone David Mitchell made up in order to tell a joke about the KKK.
Yeah.
That's the most recent Mitchell and Webb sketch I've seen.
It would be like a loose. You know what it would? It would be like a character name that an idiot in a sitcom would come up with for a movie they were writing.
A fake name coming up with by Joey Tribbiani.
Yeah, it's that sort of thing. And I play Kurt Francisco, like that.
There's this poor guy who's just like presumably not involved as just like catching strays from a podcast is like really that in itself is a little bit Trashfuture, to be honest. To be like you are as far as you know an ordinary man who happens to be named Kurt Francisco, and you like find out that people are making fun of your name in a
They
different
shouldn't have
country.
called you that. I'm sorry. Either of those two names in isolation, fine, but together,
they just sound good.
yeah.
Anyway, Kurt Francisco.
So we're making fun of his name because we're jealous. Is what you're saying.
This is like his mum comforting him at the school gate. Like those bullies on the podcast are just jealous of your beautiful name.
Comforting him at the school gate before he's flattened by a falling bus.
It's a tremendous name.
You
The
know what it
losers
is?
on the Trashfuture podcast, they say, Kurt Francisco.
It's the
sounds
fake
weird."
name that like a
Yeah.
Nazi war criminal would use in Argentina.
Or possibly in Howard County, Maryland.
Yeah. Stop defending this guy. He's actually an escaped Nazi war criminal.
He barely escaped Jimmy Savile's raid on Saint Nazaire.
Yeah, he's actually 120 years old.
120-year-old Nazi war criminal Kurt Francisco.
Yeah.
Legally speaking, Kurt Francisco is not a Nazi war criminal.
Yeah. There is no evidence to suggest that Kurt Francisco is secretly Dr. Joseph Mengele.
Kurt Francisco saw Zumba. I can't. He saw a Zoom bus pull into his North Laurel neighborhood and stop yesterday, and he took it upon himself to walk over and ask the driver if they were driving his fourth grader's route.
Yeah, he went over to the door and he went like, "Era papiera, bitte?"
He said that the driver was fumbling through paper maps and said he wasn't from the area, and that Zoom had flown
Which he
him in.
discovered when he said good luck to the driver, and the driver said thank you in English.
Discovered that they weren't from the area. Zoom had flown him in from Spokane, Washington, literally the other side of the country.
Amazing.
Ah, incredible.
Yeah, so
This
awesome.
was the last straw after I was announced by Jimmy Savile in 1943.
This is sort of like
so
has a
dirty British.
chaotic Balthazar sort of energy to it, this recording.
You know what? I think it's because the Zoom story is so slapstick. Personally,
It really is. It's like, it's so absurd. Like, why have they flown in the drivers from the other side of the country? It doesn't make any sense.
No, it's just clearly just trying to keep a plate spinning, but sort of knocking over everything around yourself as you do it, and then the plate falls over anyway.
It's very Kramer. It's a scheme that Kramer would come up with. Like, there's some kind of arbitrage opportunity to make money by getting the contract for the school buses, but then every step in the plan is more insane than the last.
So I want to move on past the news and onto something that I think builds on another topic you all were talking about, which is ULEZ, Farage, the Blade Runners, and Net Zero.
Yeah, I was so gratified to find the Blade Runners.
So you talked about Blade Runners, and I don't understand. Like, are they worried that some of the cameras are human? Like, or pretending to be human, like you can only be a camera on the off-world colonies.
Yeah, it could be a nonce.
Yeah.
Listen, I this is so clearly a sort of civil disobedience group founded in like a golf club in Sevenoaks. And so 100% they went, this is some kind of future dystopia. What's a sci-fi film I've heard of? It's like Blade Runner. I assume the good guys in Blade Runner are called Blade Runners.
Yeah, they should call themselves like the Ex Machinas or the Hers.
Yeah.
The
they're very
loopers.
right.
Yeah, we're the loopers.
Yeah. We're killing the cameras are me, but from the future. I think actually, maybe the camera could be announced. Well, I let my child drive my car sometimes, and then the camera could be taking a picture of him, making it technically a nonce.
Yeah, if a child was driving the bus to school and
Yeah.
the camera caught them, that child would be in trouble for not having the right ULEZ certificate.
These cameras don't know how easy they've got it, right? They're there taking pictures of kids on the roadside. They should be, like we did in World War II, they should be drafted into an elite unit of dangerous paedophiles and used to attack Waffen-SS positions well behind enemy lines.
Do you want to do the screenplay treatment for the very dirty dozen after this?
The idea of fucking like a Waffen-SS officer just opening his post and being like, Scheiße, they caught my motorcycle on the ULEZ cameras again. How the fuck does this get... The Obersturmführer is going to be furious.
The Reich will be unable to pay its fuel bill, £12.50 at a time. We all use Vauxhall.
£12? Are you just hearing it from the office?
Yeah, I mean, you know who else wanted to commute from outer London into central London was the Nazis after having landed on the beaches.
That's correct.
So the Blade Runners attacking ULEZ cameras. But there's also more to it, right? You sort of touched on this, but more has come out about it in that time. And what I wanted to do was sort of use this as a way to talk about how, like, the opposition to net zero, while it's intellectually incoherent, is very, very socially coherent. And like is just forming.
Real. I mean, we're gonna have some gilets jaunes moments in the future. We kind of are already, but like more so, which is gonna be fun.
And how they're gonna kind of snap into a ready-made political constituency that are just going to lockstep do things, as told by Talk TV. And the director of the Blade Runners, a man calling himself, Milo, do brace yourself for this one, Captain Gatso.
Oh, amazing. So the Gatso is like a brand of speed camera.
This is a fucking communique from like Commandante Gatso. He's got the
a man calling himself Kurt Francisco.
He's got like the balaclava and the pipe. He's like on the back of a horse.
Oh, like the Zorro of speed cameras.
I was thinking more like the Zapatistas. These are sort of like outer London Zapatistas.
That would be cool if he was carving a big Z into the back of like ULEZ cameras.
So right, Captain Gatso, who again, as we say, this is a revolution born in a Seven Oaks golf club.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really interested too. There's a sort of like inflection point as we know, Captain is the only rank. It's a cool thing to call yourself, but like,
yeah.
Is he adopting this on the basis of like a superhero, which is more of your sort of like Fathers for Justice, UKIP kind of like rabble-rousing bullshit thing? Or is he calling it that in the kind of like UDA paramilitary sense, in which case something has like changed in outlook quite considerably?
Or like he's trying to take the mantle of Captain Tom and he wants his own like onsen. Captain Gatso onsen.
Captain Gatso onsen is like a fucking Kurt Francisco's boss at the cyber cops.
Yeah. Arrayed to get on the side of Captain Gatso. You've got the ULEZ Defense Force and you've got the ULEZ Volunteer Organization. But defending the ULEZ, you've got the ULEZ, the provisional ULEZ, the real ULEZ.
So Gatso defended the group's image on Talk TV when asked by presenter Julia Hartley-Brewer how the group justified the illegal destruction of cameras. Gatso said, and again, it's important to note, he's not being yelled over, he's not being dismissed.
Well, maybe the problem was, like, whenever they've had anyone from, like, Just Stop Oil on, they needed to have the kind of, like, middle-aged, very divorced man histrionics of calling yourself Captain Gatso, right?
Yeah. They'd have to be called, like, Captain Vegan or something.
Yeah.
Like, come up with a good...
What are you, Captain Vegan? That sounds too much like an insult.
It's like a fucking Captain Birdseye's much maligned cousin.
So it says, it's unpaid voluntary work for the community, said Gatso. Julia, let's be under no illusions. When you're under constant attack from this government and all other governments previously, you have to take defensive, offensive action. So they're doing the Bush doctrine.
Well, this is also amazing. The Gilets Jaunes thing, right? Is like against all governments, but like in a reactionary way, which is always a fun time, never results in anything bad for anyone. Also, you do not want to look into what Captain Birdseye is accused of having done during the Troubles.
Well, he poured tartar sauce all over himself once. So
Captain Birds are like self-immolating dinosaurs.
So in Orpington, in the borough of Bromley.
See, these are my people. I understand them intimately. I have walked among the people of Bromley and Orpington. This is entirely on brand. Within the heart of every single guy there lives Captain Gatso. He and the people are one.
No, it's within the heart of every single guy in Orpington. There's Captain Gatso or a woman trying to get out.
It was one time. I'm the only one.
So
They tell us we can't drive to the Glade shopping centre. They tell us we can't drive to the Chislehurst Caves. They say we can't access the Blackwall Tunnel, the most convenient way of getting to the Thurrock Lakeside shopping centre. And to them I say,
no, it's not.
No more. Well,
No,
it
it's gonna
is
be
if
like-
you live in Bromley, maybe.
Protracted people,
Yeah.
Maoist people's war focused around the Glades shopping centre and the pedestrianised bit of Bromley High Street.
Yeah.
There was like actually when I think it was like GB News or Talk TV, I saw a clip online, but they went to Bromley to like ask them about this, and one person did say it's really going to prevent me from going to the Glade shopping centre where I have to take my car. Bearing in mind, but where they were filming this was 10 minutes walk from the Glade shopping centre. So yeah, that's the kind of the Captain Gatso inside of you that will drive everywhere and anywhere.
only in a 2002 diesel car.
But
also.
only in a 2002
You have to get
diesel
like
car.
2002 Renault Megane and drive from like Shortlands to the Glade shopping centre.
That you refuse to get rid of because it has some sentimental value, and that sentimental value is something along the lines of like, I took my mum to the doctors once in there, and it still smells of her.
They're trying to get Thierry Henry to get rid of his 2002 diesel Renault Megane, and he won't do it.
So, but and I very rarely look at Telegraph comments, but under one of the articles about Captain again being very neutral and even-handed about Captain Gatso and the Blade Runners, and one commenter said, "It's about time the masses revolted. Let's start a Captain Gatso for wokeness too, but not sure how." Any ideas?
Not sure how.
For wokeness. Oh, as in so not wokeness 2 as in wokeness,
the
the number
sequel.
2 wokeness.
As also wokeness
Right,
as well.
okay.
I've said this for a while though, that I hate when the state defends itself against the left, but I love when it defends itself against the right. I look forward to like this spiraling wildly out of control, and like 2025 I'm opening a big newspaper and the headline is that Captain Gatso has been like found and killed by the police and military.
He's like Saddam Hussein. He's like hiding in a hole deep in the Chislehurst cave with his cadre of diehards.
They have done Captain Gatso Pablo Escobar style.
That's where the Gatso militia will be formed deep inside Chislehurst caves, where Captain Gatso will operate as like a Bane style character.
Yeah. The British Army will allow Captain Gatso to build his own prison within the confines of the ULEZ zone, but exempt from its classification.
So the thing is, right, like, these people, like the people whose main priority now, right, but based on their 15-minute city panic and their vaccine panic and their various sort of complexities, I'm just responding to what the Telegraph or Times or Spectator or Express or Talk TV or GB News, God, there's a lot of that. Anyway, better not look into it. Say, right? It's intellectually completely incoherent because they're furious that like, oh, we don't feel like we own our infrastructure, right? And yet, Denmark owns all of our wind farms. Like of course it's intellectually incoherent because
someone should do a stand-up comedy bit about that.
Yeah, because it's just reacting to the news kind of based on how the tone of the people you're fans of on the news react to the news, right? That's all that is. But it's socially incredibly coherent because they all know who they hate.
Well, this is the thing. This is why they've won over the Telegraph comments. And there is one more detail from the Telegraph comments that I wanted to highlight, which is there is one reply up top, which is, your standard sort of boomer thing, which is like, oh, so the Met Police can't stop drug, acid, county lines, machete yobs, but they can waste time on this. But the guy writing it has chosen the screen name for himself, the Hypertension Kid.
Amazing.
That's
amazing.
Right?
Captain Gatso's sidekick.
Yeah, it's because these people are all going to burst blood vessels in their brains because they are terrified and angry and alienated all the time. And yeah, it doesn't matter, right? That, oh, wow, how strange that the priorities of many people in Britain are to pursue like fighting climate change, and yet whenever they have to do it, they don't like it, blah, blah, blah. Because that keeps, and that's I've got a sort of a passage here, right, from the Tony Blair Institute, their response to this kind of thing, which I think is very illustrative and is likely to be what the Starmer government in waiting comes to as their solution, right? Is that the reactions to this, I'll assume it's intellectually coherent, but doesn't have a social base. Like if you can just convince them the right way, but you'll never convince them because ultimately they are socially cohered by hating you.
Yeah, join me, Mr. Chapo, for a 10-minute walk around Bromley, and you will understand.
Yeah. I listened to an amazing debate, which I think is like, it speaks to this phenomenon, if not to this specific issue. I was listening to Jeremy Vine today for the first time in ages, and he was having a debate about,
somewhere?
I was indeed,
yeah.
About into the ULEZ zone, in my ULEZ compliant vehicle. Thank you, jump right in. And basically they were discussing this policy where the Scottish government in Glasgow wants to introduce a policy of drug taking rooms, drug consumption rooms, where people who have severe drug addiction will be able to take drugs safely. It's a policy that has been done all over the world and has worked everywhere it has been tried.
It was tried here, and they sort of like resisted it until it became untenable for them to do that, and that's now what they're doing.
Yeah, so there's this kind of like semi-legal drug consumption room thing that operates in Glasgow, but it doesn't have an official legal sanction. So basically, the SNP are trying to like make this a thing, and they were having, and the Home Office has, before even hearing the argument, has flat out said, we will never condone the taking of drugs. And then they're having this debate where just like various people who knew about the topic were coming on and being like, well, this policy has been hugely successful in reducing drug deaths and addiction problems and so on in these various jurisdictions where it's been tried. And those are, in fact, all the jurisdictions where it's been tried. And then they had a succession of other people coming on and going like, no, that's bollocks. I don't like drugs. And it's like, but you can't just say that. That is every political debate in this country fundamentally.
Yeah, and you can't say, and the Tony Blair Institute, their idea, right? Yeah. This is from their How to Address the Growing Backlash Against Net Zero Policy paper, which again, like, I think they understand that that's the next thing, because the people in the UK politics who are very, very good at understanding that kind of thing, like for example Nigel Farage, are hitching their way. He was so lost until he had this. He was just watching the Queen with his beer on his tiny TV. He was doing his investment newsletter that I think
considering changing his name to Kurt Francisco.
Yeah. He was walking around Bromley, wondering who was going to win, Captain Gatso or the woman inside him.
Yeah,
Wait, Captain Gatso was getting pegged?
Yeah. And or he was doing his investment newsletter that he did like one of and then stopped. Right, but he's back on this now because, of course, this constituency of sort of alienated, agitated, terrified, angry people, they haven't gone away. They're just locked onto something else to lash out at. And once again, it seems like the Starmer-Blair tendency, their response to it is to say we have to be even more careful, even more measured, even more apologetic, and even more invisible in what we do. They say, this is just a little selection from their paper, while net zero cannot be delivered without cost to the public or individuals, these should be carefully managed and minimized where possible. And again, like, yes, fine, right? Yes, they absolutely should. But the way that they do that...
against this, Climate Stalin should be delivered with sort of maximum disregards for everyone.
But this only interprets costs one way, right? This doesn't say, and also maximum benefits. What they really are talking about in this paper is the minimum impact of any kind. Right, so they say, for example, for decarbonizing challenges like building and transport, we need innovative ways of making the cost more feasible, such as creating a green mortgage market and affordable financing for heat pump repayment. They are fighting against Captain Gatso with affordable financing for heat pump repayment. That's the plan.
Yeah, it's sort of like, let's talk about sort of means-tested repayments for certain kinds of heat pump boilers. And meanwhile, Captain Gatso is like busy training his men on like machetes or whatever.
And, you know, they say the government should introduce incentives for green choices, including feed-in tariffs or scrappage schemes for cars and gas boilers.
They did, though. The thing about the fucking ULEZ stuff is that the scrappage schemes were there. And in a lot of cases, it was like, hey, if you have like a shitty 2002 Renault, like you can take it in and we'll give you like way more money for it than it deserves and that you'll get from like some fucking Essex geezer. And you can buy yourself a new shitty car, right? But like where, in like Bexley, for example, like none of the scrappage stuff was ever really present. You kind of had to find that out yourself. And they used so much money trying to take City Hall to court on a case that they were going to lose, and they knew that they were going to lose. And really, I do wonder how much of it was just sort of used to kind of, propel like anti-Khan like sentiment in the run up to the mayoral election. But like, no, those incentives were there. Like the basic, like this isn't sort of, it was absent, or even like the communication was bad. Like all those things were there. But like the issue at hand is that these types of like incentives do not work, because once these and I don't know, like I think the sort of presence of Farage and like post-Brexit really does show that like, no, any of these types of, we can sort of use facts and logic to get people to where they need to be, it does not function anymore. And it feels like it's just something that they refuse to understand, because by confronting it, then they sort of have to also confront, they've sort of got to confront things they don't really want to accept.
Yeah, how did all these people get radicalized in the first place?
Right,
And
yeah.
And the other thing, they're trying to fight it on the fucking cheap. That's the suggest, right? A green mortgage market might involve some investment, but it's what it's betting on is huge amounts of private sector money flooding in to solve the problem. You are trying to
Tony Blair relying on the private sector.
It's crazy, right? But even then, right? They're calling this a positive demand-led transition rather than one delivered through bans and financial penalties. Bans and financial penalties. Yes, that's true. But what they're proposing is so small fry, so public-private partnership, so fucking 90s, that I see no chance of it winning against the likes of Captain Gatso.
Yeah.
But it's never going to de-radicalize him is the main thing.
No.
Put your money on Captain Gatso. That's Trashfuture's gambling pick of the week. We're now a gambling advice podcast.
Listen, I think that the state will probably win out against Captain Gatso in the same way that the French Republic did against the Gilets jaunes, but like in a way that involves giving him most of what he wants, right? I think ultimately, like, this is the kind of thing that, like, the manifestation of it is unacceptable, but it only serves to sort of, like, sheepdog government into sort of, like, accepting the more, like, the less radical sort of, like, expression of the same idea, which is I should be allowed to drive my car through and into the Glades shopping center.
Yeah, I should be able to hire a Zoom bus to drop onto my enemies. Anyway, before I also finish, it's also not just about de-radicalizing Captain Gatso and the Blade Runners. God, it's so fucking stupid.
Captain Gatso and the Blade Runners are like a British shoegaze band.
Yeah, but it's also about what's more fun on TV. One's more fun, one's cool, one's fun, one's big. What you can imagine yourself in how do you imagine yourself as like the protagonist or as part of a fight against climate change with a fucking green mortgage market versus a guy calling himself a captain leading a cadre, but also you've
building an army in Chislehurst Caves.
But also you've got all the fun stuff about TV and politics in media once again has lined up on the side of trying to make sure that we can roll coal in schools.
I think what's really interesting about this is on both sides, if you want to call it that, really there's a contention. Well, really the conflict is over like two sets of people that want to see the world in the way that they believe it to be. And so on like the Captain Gatso and the Blade Runners side, and like building the Bain
Great new wave album.
and build they see the world as like this set of institutions that is kind of fundamentally like against them, and but they sort of need to fight back with violence. But the thing again, the things that are against them are not to do with like material conditions. It's just more to do with like I want to sit in traffic and honk my horn, and this sort of like Muslim mayor is like stopping me from doing that. And you're right in the sense that the sort of the whole like right-wing media infrastructure is one that will always kind of present it as entertainment. And like the whole pipeline from the Telegraph to like GB News is one in which like this information is sort of rendered as entertainment. Like there were like segments of GB News that basically present any type of kind of I imagine most stories, but like of the clips that I've seen, the environment stories are very much framed as like these people are against you. And like the host will say that, like these people who are like, you know, whether it's Just Stop Oil or whether it's like, you know, an academic who says that, oh, like, you know, just because it's cold in the UK does not mean that like climate change isn't happening, and it does not mean that like, you know, the fires that are happening in Europe.
It's a debate between that person and a guy going, yeah, no, but I think that's bollocks.
Well, fucking exactly that,
well,
right?
It's cold, isn't it?
But in that case, and I don't know whether you guys saw the clip, but the clip where like the hosts are sort of like forcing themselves to laugh in a way to like humiliate this academic that they've sort of like brought on to like tell them that, oh yeah, like, yeah, the earth is actually burning and it's burning at a much faster rate than you can possibly imagine. But like, that's the whole point, that the way that they frame this is one where they are constantly hammering to their audience that like these institutions, these people, like, and that's an amorphous term, can change, like, are all against you. And then on the other side, you've got like the Tony Blair, like, you know, Labour Party people who, while, you know, when they're not sort of at war with like anyone who they believe is like left wing in any capacity, kind of want to see the world as if it's 1997. They believe facts and logic will work. I don't even know if facts and logic worked back then, but like it kind of, I think, yeah, like I think the point being made that like what they don't understand is that their enemy isn't a group that is like presenting a different set of like, you know, logic. They are fighting against entertainment, and it's very clear who's going to win out, especially in like especially in an environment where it's seen so clearly that politics is so responsive to media that it makes no sense that they can kind of think that they don't have to engage with it on that media's terms, and especially the media that they've chosen to believe are more likely to be worth listening to.
And I think that's probably a good place to leave it and go into our final segment for this episode, which is an article from The Telegraph entitled Britain's Corporate Slackers. You found this one, Hussein.
Yes.
Britain's corporate slackers are about to get their comeuppance. And then the tagline for this article is amazing. Disposable flesh and blood employees will soon no longer be needed. By Matthew Lynn for The Telegraph. Long live the new flesh.
I love, they're all talking like anime villains. I love it. It's great.
Yeah. Flesh and blood will crumble before Captain Gatso and his army of Blade Runners. Yeah. And then like a sword swishing effect where it's like shing.
Yeah,
you know,
awesome.
Yeah, that's Kurt Francisco coming in.
Yeah. Speed camera slowly just like falling in half after standing intact for a few seconds. Yeah.
Kurt Francisco? What?
Yeah, Kurt Francisco is like off-brand Duncan Idaho. Yeah. That's the.
This is Matthew Lynn talking about how the new basically saying long live the new flesh. Delayed flights, unexpected childcare duties, and bad scheduling. We've all had times when it was impossible to get to a meeting, but now there's a simple solution. Matthew Lynn, you are a columnist.
This is like a LinkedIn post.
Yeah. But also, like, you're a columnist. What meetings are you going to? A
meeting with my wife about the divorce.
Thanks to the whizzes at Google, there's an article.
The whizzes at
the
Google.
The boffins in California.
Oh, I love this. This kind of like old British man who's like, have you heard of the interweb? My grandson was talking to me about this thing called Google the other day. It's like Ask Jeeves, but it has a maps component.
Yeah, I never guess what the backroom boys have dreamed up.
The backroom boys, the even gayer Backstreet Boys.
So, thanks to the whizzes at Google, there's an AI assistant that could be sent instead, where it will take notes and present talking points on its human instructor's behalf. So, having already been released from the burden of going to the office, now slackers won't even need to put in an appearance on Zoom.
Cool.
Amazing.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds like we can save some labor.
You know what, mate? AI would struggle to do most jobs, but you know what an AI wouldn't have struggled to do? Write this fucking article.
Here's the problem. If work can be easily replicated by AI, it will become clear that the flesh and blood employees those robots are substituting are no longer needed.
Why does he keep saying flesh and blood?
I don't
The pale, supple flesh.
Matthew Lynn, possibly a vampire?
Yeah, let's look into this.
The cum-laden balls of the average British employee.
Every British newspaper has to have one vampire. It's part of their like terms and conditions for diversity and inclusion.
He lays into that later on in the article. We've read a few Matthew Lin. I'll get to it. But also, it's like, number one, I don't want to engage with what his actual ideas too much because they're stupid. But who does he think makes the stuff and comes up with the talking points that the robots are all recombining to make look like something plausible?
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong that there are a lot of bullshit jobs, right? That's something that like we are also aware of. But like the answer to those isn't well, whatever he's going to propose. I'm pretending for the point of this that I haven't read the rest of it yet.
That they should sacrifice their flesh and blood. To
Yeah,
the machines.
exactly. You should sacrifice your flesh, blood, cum, and balls in order to, like, you know.
And then we'll all be doing well in the heart of the machine.
But,
yeah.
And that's even if we're imagining that a lot of those jobs are worthwhile, right? They still need the people to like come up, because if you just let the robots keep coming up with the stuff, if you let AI just keep automating things, we know what happens when it starts eating. Yeah, it gets brain poison as soon as it starts eating itself. But
robot BSE.
Undeterred, Matthew Lin goes on. Britain's army of slackers. I didn't know our army was all slackers. Not least
the slacker core, the nonce core.
Not least in our bloated public sector, have been working less and less for years.
Say what you will about the nonce core, they're motivated.
With the latest developments in AI.
Just like the fucking assault course, you have to like climb up over a brick wall.
I'll tell you what, if I were in the opposite trench to the Waffen SS, I'd rather have a nonce by my side than the average millennial.
With the latest developments...
Not afraid of a bit of hard work.
With the latest developments in AI and the growing backlash against working from home, they may be finally about to get their comeuppance, and the economy will be stronger as a result. I have I know like there's a few things like, what's the economy, Matthew? What is it? What actually is it? How does it get stronger or weaker?
When people buy shoes, I think. Raphael Bear taught me that.
Yeah, but also I like the
our foot and shoes employees.
The hatred.
Gross.
The whole sort of anger of working from home gave me a kind of reverie where I remembered probably my favorite thing an MP has ever said who's not Matt Hancock.
Right.
In 2021, Jake Berry, and I went back into my archives and confirmed this, said to a fringe event at episode notes, said to a fringe event at a Tory party conference the following sentence, probably the best sentence ever said. We have to end the civil service woking from home. Sorry, I mean working from home, but let's be honest, it is often woking.
Woking hard or hardly woking.
Yeah, that's right. I love to play the Tory party fringe. It's a great place to preview your Edinburgh show a few times.
It's been a hard day's night, and I've been woking like a dog.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Thank you. I love that. But woking from and
I'm an essential woker.
Yeah. Here's the glorious thing. It does kind of go into that. So back to the article. In fairness, Google Meet may be a valuable tool for a few hyper-busy executives, but there can be no avoiding that this represents yet another step towards a slacker economy.
Oh, yeah, let's go. Wait, he's trying to like write like a John Hughes movie.
Yeah, well, is there a snobs economy as well?
Yeah. There's a slobs v snobs. Like he sees himself as the teacher in the Breakfast Club. He's like, you mess with the bull, you get the horns, and he's dealing with the slacker of Emilio Estevez. And
but there's the imagination here, just that everybody will stop doing everything and just sort of allow themselves to fuse into their couches and carpets.
Yeah, basically.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. What is a slacker economy? What does it look like?
It's like WALL-E, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, apparently the trend has been clear for years. It started with the rise of human resources.
Wow.
Bloody woke human resources.
Back to Anime Villain again, because you said flesh and blood so much that the term human resources has lost its conventional meaning and gone back to a kind of darker conceptual idea.
HR departments developed from being minor administrative units that organize pay slips and manage the holiday rota to engines of entitlement, constantly demanding wellness, work-life balance, and mindfulness initiatives which sap our productivity.
What they mostly do is demand that you do annoying, pointless things that are company policy.
And crucially, they work for management. Like, there hasn't been, to the best of my knowledge, right? Maybe I've missed some while I've been sort of focusing on West Africa, but maybe, like, there hasn't been any HR department-based coups, as far as I know. Like, we haven't had this thing where a bunch of, like...
the ground. The paperwork alone.
Just like
Well,
a bunch
the
of
thing is that
HR
the
executives have like seized the radio stations. The CEO is no longer in power. He's been confined to house arrest, and now you all have to woke from home.
Look, the tanks are very useful in overthrowing the government, but the problem is they do present health and safety issues because we do not have currently enough first aiders involved with it. None of this has been checked. Also, if the coup is not over by 9 p.m, we are going to be up against it with a working time directive. So I don't see how this coup can be a workable option today.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Right? He said, over the course of the pandemic, the HR blob took this to new levels. He does believe that there's an HR deep state.
Too many things are being accused of being blobs now for me to keep up. Like, how many blobs are there supposed to be? You've got the woke civil service blob, the woke media blob, the lefty lawyer blob, now the HR department blob. It's
HR blob is like the name of a guy who would have been an advisor to George Bush Sr. when he was the head of the CIA.
So the HR
speaking
blob.
of blog Binsky, fuck no.
Yeah.
The HR blob, again, like this, when you're Matthew Lynn, when you're a
I don't know
Telegraph
what's wrong with
columnist,
that. Yeah.
you are a baby. All you see is blobs, just shapes and colors around
Shapes and blobs.
And temporary measures for working from home are being at risk of being turned into a permanent right. Again, led by like the HR fedayeen.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And not the fact that like people do not want to go to woke, to woke in the office. They want to like woke from home. Because it's much more convenient and doesn't seem to like appreciably impact productivity in most cases at all.
Well, he says productivity has been sinking like a stone since the pandemic. Couldn't be any other reason, of course.
Yeah.
No.
But
Also, the chart he shows, productivity flatlines around 2007. So what the fuck are you showing?
Well, that was when things went woke.
yeah, that was when
that's
the blob
woke-
started.
Yeah. When the housing market went woke.
Yeah, HR took over.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we had the collateralized woke obligation.
So now many people are cheerfully using this new generation of AI work tools to write memos, draft strategy, or send routine emails.
There were strippers in South Florida who had variable mate mortgages on up to 60 pronouns each.
They are outsourcing their day jobs, and it can't be long before officials in the Welsh Assembly or some other pointless taxpayer-funded body are drawing six-figure salaries.
Hold on a second.
The Welsh catching stray fucking elephant gun bullets here. It's so funny to lump in the Welsh Assembly with like a quango to be like pointless government expenditures, like I don't know, like something like the fisheries assessor or whatever, and the Welsh Assembly and the entire nation of Wales, which is a needless overhead.
Yeah, we're not using it. But like, who else is gonna do it? Like, does this guy want to do the government of Wales just in his spare time?
No, he wants either ChatGPT to do it or to hire some like motivated tech people.
I think he was complaining about them using ChatGPT
We're gonna have
because
Wales from home.
You should be like sitting at a desk and like doing all of your sums by hand with a quill.
Well, it's that you shouldn't use ChatGPT because if you do, you'll be fired. And then it's good that ChatGPT took your job because now it's just go-getters and the computer.
What does this man actually feel about AI?
Well, I'll tell you what this man actually feels, right? Which is all that he feels, right? Is that power is good and that if you are smaller, you should be dominated.
I think it's just like the very kind of classic conservative thing of like, you know, your politics just don't work anymore. You're not really sure what to do about it. So it is now entirely driven by spite. And you're not really sure who you're spiteful to, which goes back to like Captain Gaster, right? Which is just like, you know, and the sort of like the blob that kind of increasingly expands and brings more people in that you're not really sure.
Like the ULEZ itself.
That's right. It is the anger inside these people's brains is like the ULEZ zone. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. You never know when you're part of it. And once you're in, like, there's nothing you can do to stop it except to pay them £12.50.
But I think that goes sort of with what I'm saying, right? Which is there is this they're the beloved of power, and so they believe that there is a secret egalitarian conspiracy riven throughout society. All of these blobs, every single part of these blobs, they're secret liberal or egalitarian conspiracies that no sort of true hoary-handed son of toil British columnist or farmer, it's the same thing really, would ever tolerate, right? And so something like the Welsh Assembly, because it allows Wales to do things differently from England shouldn't be tolerated because England is big and powerful and Wales is not, which means that Wales should submit to England and that we should treat things like the Welsh Assembly with contempt because devolution was a egalitarian conspiracy that should be overturned.
Check this shit out. Wokers of the world unite.
Does he also believe that the HR department are the things that prevent bosses from being like cruel and tyrannical?
Yes.
Yeah, they're like bullying CEOs.
So his issue is that the CEOs are getting too many like surveys they have to fill in. And so they can't like whip their employees because every time they go to get the whip, the HR person comes in and says, sorry, you need to fill out this 50-page document.
Well, like, yeah, it's more like sort of the HR managers are giving CEOs swirlies.
Right, okay.
Sort of like, or wedgies, or like, shooting at their feet and making them dance Old West style.
Well, they'll be laughing on the other side of their face when we fire all the HR departments and move Wales into a porter cabin.
So I'm going to wrap it up with how it all comes together. Unions are often outraged when firms suggest our work-from-home culture is damaging their bottom lines. However, if your job could be done from the sofa, it could be either done overseas, or if your job may be done by an AI machine, then your employer may ask whether it's actually needed. And yeah, most of these jobs are busy work. If it can be done by an AI, your job probably was already an AI. Most probably can't. Again, as I always say, the threat isn't that it can be taken by an AI. It's that they can just threaten you enough to break it up and de-skill it.
But
whatever.
Previously, we've always needed those people who are employed in those make-work jobs to spend money on shoes, which keeps the economy going. And in order to do that, they had to have a certain standard of luxury available to them, and to an extent kind of mandatory to them. And now that, as this thing that you like to say, that the wire is shrinking now that things are getting difficult, we just kind of don't need them to do that anymore. We don't need you to buy as many shoes or, be able to pay rent.
Because the jobs are so the class system ticks over, but yeah, if you're
we're kind of not interested in it ticking over anymore.
Well, precisely. So here's how it all comes together. One has to wonder whether some roles will be replaced with AI robots that don't need diversity and inclusion training. The whole thing was just a broadside against HR and diversity and inclusion training. Basically everything Matthew Lynn writes is. It's very funny.
The DEI thing, I just think about this. Every group, every political tendency has one term of one of their enemies that they've sort of learned and will not let go of. For like 19-year-old Maoists on Twitter, it's color revolution, and for the right wing, it's DEI. And I'm just like left with like, who taught you about this? Where did you get that? Put it down.
Well, it's the last time they had the few that retired in like 2010, like the youngest ones of these guys. Because none of these people have jobs. They're gleefully wanting to like whip people back to work because none of them have jobs.
Yeah, because the Telegraph isn't really even a manager's newspaper. It's like a retiree's newspaper.
Yeah, precisely. And he says, eventually the economy, still not defined, what is it, will emerge stronger. But there will be a lot of pain along the way, especially if redundancies are signed off by a meeting of Google bots without a single human in attendance.
We have to do shock therapy on ourselves. Not me, though, just ourselves.
Incoherent article.
Well, what I like also, again, 2 Telegraph comments in one episode, I know. But I looked at the comments for this, and this one commenter writes, but have you considered the future where millions of humans are suddenly out of work? They'll all go on benefits.
Awesome. Yeah, Blade Runner 2049. Everyone is on benefits. People have forgotten what work is. People can only woke now.
Anyway, I think that's going to be about it for us today.
I think this is another great example of like, who are you mad at? What do you actually want? Do you know who you're mad at?
No.
Have you thought about who you're mad at?
HR.
But like, he's not even mad at them. I'm not going to continue anymore, but like, he's not even really mad at them. He's just angry about stuff.
I'm a Blade Runner. I'm employed to cleanse the last drivers from the streets of Wokio, Japan.
All right. Now I think that's about it for today. Because that has happened. So,
my one remaining enemy, Captain Gatso.
So, I would like to say thank you very much for listening. To say we have a Patreon. It's $5 a month for a second episode every week. You can subscribe to it. It's a lot of fun. And to thank my co-host for being here.
A pleasure.
And to say welcome back, me.
Good to be back in
welcome
studio,
back,
too.
yeah.
from my and welcome back, Milo, to the studio. This is the first regular episode we've done in a while.
We haven't had a
I know,
regular
yeah.
one for a while.
Yeah, I was at the
We've
Tory
had-
Party Fringe all month.
You were woking from Edinburgh.
That's right, I was.
All right. Anyway, there's also Left Unread. There's Britanology. There's 10. Those are on the $10 tier. There are more episodes. There's streaming. There's Thursday and Monday.
There's our new podcast about Surrey, Woking Hard or Hardly Woking.
That's it. Could you please do one episode of Woking Hard or Hardly Woking?
That feels like a sitcom, but I would love to do that.
All right. Look out for the test script of Woking Hard or Hardly Woking. It's about Surrey. And we will see.
Oh, it took me ages to get here. Traffic was backed up all the way to Leatherhead. Woking hard or hardly woking.
We're going to have another rhyme for Woking as we go. Yeah. Don't worry about that. All right. So that's the reward for the people who stay through the plugs, is that Milo usually keeps saying stuff.
That's right.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Walking down the Fulham Road, what should I see? Hot Tory, showing off the signet ring and looking at me. Hot Tory, you ask me for some Mackie and you ask me my name. Hot Tory, you said you'd pay me later if I bought some cocaine. Hot Tory, your brothers in the household cavalry. Your birthday's a 2-page spread in Tablet magazine. Hot Tory, joggers and a bomber coat. Hot Tory, your parents' house has a moat. You got a Cambridge Trust and a painting of Thatcher, but it's the inconvenient part. Hot Tory, you could privatize my heart. You ask me about shooting on your country estate. Hot Tory, I've just met David Cameron and he's calling me mate. Hot Tory, is this just a fling or is it something more? Hot Tory, your granddad seems upset about the war. Hot Tory, when I hear that accent, it's a sign. Your mum's an alcoholic and your dad's got a diamond mine. Hot Tory, joggers and a bomber coat. Hot Tory, your parents' house has a moat. You got a Cambridge Trust and a painting of Thatcher, but it's the inconvenient part. Hot Tory, you could privatize my heart. If my mom's name is Marcy and her dog's name is Jay, if pieces comes in at the thought of ever taking a train, if she's an Austin or a Cantab or at least a Donnell, if his brother and his uncle are both knights of the realm. Politically I know we disagree, but I can't deny this telco looks good on me. Hot Tory, joggers and a bomber coat. Hot Tory, your parents' house has a moat. You got a Cambridge Trust and a painting of Thatcher, but here's the inconvenient part. A Hot Tory, you could privatize my